Hello everyone, Dusty here, and as you can tell, I'm in a cemetery, specifically the historic Mount Olivet Cemetery. This cemetery is actually famous for a lot of reasons. It's one of the oldest cemeteries in the state of Utah. I think it's about the same age as the Salt Lake City Cemetery. It's just a few miles away from here. It was the only cemetery to be created by act of Congress. So this cemetery is actually older than the state of Utah. So I think that's pretty interesting. You know, you may be wondering, like, why am I making a video in a cemetery? Well, there's a lot of beauty that happens in cemeteries. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but look at all these deers and does that are behind me. That's something that you see a lot, especially at this cemetery. Very beautiful. Death is all around us. We all know this. We've seen the news. We have lived in this world for obviously long enough to think about things. So what better way to confront your own mortality than at a cemetery? And you know, there's a lot of beauty that is here. I'm going to be showcasing and kind of just show you a lot of the cool stuff that's here. What I hope that you take from this video is that, you know, you can find beauty even in sadness. So let's get into it. We're pretty much just going to be exploring and seeing all the stuff that's here. When you visit the cemetery often, you know, you remember where certain things are. These are the graves of my third great grandparents, so my great 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 grandparents. I always remember that they are right by this crooked tree. These are the mother and the stepfather of my great great grandpa Slater. And my grandma Ethel, born in 1889, passed in 1979. So she was, if my math is correct, she was 89 when she passed, which is a pretty, you know, long time. And the individual right here, the reason why I have my flag out is he's a World War I veteran, specifically. He was in the engineers, if I'm not mistaken, and he was actually wounded in action during World War I. And me and my great great aunt are currently working to get him posthumously, obviously, recognition for his service, but specifically a Purple Heart. So we'll see exactly how that all comes into play. So it's crazy to think that, of course, I'm only 22, but that you can have great great grandparents who were only born in the 1880s. So that's also probably a product of a lot of people in my family marrying relatively young. Like when my father was my age, I was born, I'm the second of two kids. So to put it in a little bit of perspective, but yeah, that's also a cool thing you find out when you waltz through cemeteries. You find a little bit of your own history, and I think it's pretty cool. And one of the reasons why I'm also highlighting my great great-grandpa's stepdad is that, you know, blood doesn't make you family, love does. I feel like that's very evident here, obviously. Her first husband, my proper third great-grandfather, is buried in the cemetery, but obviously she chose to be buried next to Harry, so. But like see if we can find my proper grandpas later, so. Wow. And look how beautiful this is. This is just remarkable, I would say. And looking at all the dates, like all the unique designs and everything. Wow. Yeah, so this is my great-great-great-great-great-grandpa Slater. He passed very young. He was 41 when he died. From what I've read about and what I've heard about through family is that he was not the nicest person, apparently. He died of alcoholism, and if you look at the date, 1932, that's, I forget the exact timeline for the Prohibition era, but if I'm not mistaken, it was during that time. You know, we are judged by the decisions that we make in life. That's also the dichotomy, you know? Good, bad, whatever, you know? Death doesn't discriminate, whether you're young or you're old or anything of that sort, so. It's just very interesting. And here are my second great-grandparents. Not actually too far from where my Grandpa Slater is, actually, ironically. But yeah, I mean, I talk about each one individually. But. So, this is my, dang. So, this is my great-great-grandpa Smith. And obviously, as you can see, he passed away very young. He was 36 when my great-grandfather and his brother were very, very young. He's one that his story is actually super fascinating to me, at least. He was like an industrialist and like an entrepreneur for his day, apparently. He was like a early oil tycoon, or he was trying to be, I guess, because in the images and pictures and the letters I have seen, he's like going all over the West, like Arizona, Utah, California, and doing a whole bunch of different things and just exploring, absorbing as much as he can, trying to find his way in the world. And yeah, he passed very young, supposedly when he was on like the eve of striking big, apparently, supposedly. That's a story that I read. That's not me. That's not like a family tale. That's something that one of his buddies, like right after he passed, wrote. I don't know if I had the letter for that scanned, but yeah, his story is very fascinating. His story is one that I definitely am going to look into more. There's literally hundreds of letters of his between him and my grandmother, and dozens of photographs. I have a book that's like this thick. I think I have at my apartment. It's just about some of his travels. This isn't even all of his pictures that he does have, so his story is one that I definitely wanted to look into more and maybe see if I can do like a film about it or something. And I actually might be able to make it really unique, especially with the help of my grandmother over here, so let's talk about her. Great-great-grandma Smith, Ellen Markle Smith. she lived a lot longer. Born in 1894, passed in 1984, so that's really crazy. So there's actually some video and footage of her, which I'll probably be showing when I'm talking about this, but her story is very fascinating because, again, my grandpa passed in 1930, around the Great Depression time and all that, but she raised my great-grandpa Smith and his brother Milo by herself. She was a single mom. She didn't remarry, to my knowledge, so that's just really commending for her to do that. I have the utmost respect for her, especially with how well my great-grandpa Smith turned out. But supposedly my great-aunt actually, like, I guess had to be in the early 80s or late 70s, actually got I don't know exactly what that was, but anyway. But so my great aunt apparently got an on-camera interview with her, just talking about her life. So, and talking about, I assume, my grandpa and his grown up, my great-great-grandpa and stuff like that. So that is, there's very few like material items I want to have, but I really, really want to have that because it would like help unlock a lot of the questions I have about, the Smith side of my family. I can trace back a lot of my family history on, other sides of my family. That's also links to like the LDS side, my family on that side doing all that history. But ironically, on the Smith side, there's not really any of that. So I have a lot of questions I've been trying to find out, and that interview would be a great piece of it. And of course, getting to understand my grandpa Milo a little bit more and seeing exactly what goes all up there. So that's definitely something I want to get working on within the next year or something like that. I have other projects I'm working on. I'm always working on something, but yeah, that's just really cool. And of course, all the people I've talked about, I have no personal relationship to. They all have since passed, but of course with like my grandma Ellen here, this is my grandpa's grandma. That is important to me. I don't know, it's very cool to look at your family history and talk about it. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy that I came here. I remember when I first tried, like a year or two ago, to like look for everything, I was stumbling. There's websites like Find a Grave that are a great help, but it's still hard to find, especially if they're, obviously you have headstones from 1930 to 1980, but I don't know, it's very cool. But yeah, these are the stones I specifically want to talk about and highlight and tell their stories. So let's explore and see what else we can find, okay? So this is a part of the cemetery that I was really wanting to highlight. It's obviously every cemetery has usually some veterans buried there. It'd probably be harder to find ones that you couldn't find. Now, obviously, I've talked about a few already, but this is the cool thing about this part of the cemetery is that it is dedicated to a lot of the Civil War veterans who are buried here. I think that's very interesting because, of course, Utah was not a state during the Civil War, but very much like the story of the West, you know, they immigrated out west to find new livelihoods and settle down here. And it's cool that, you know, there's this tribute to them here. So I'm gonna be looking at them. Of course, classic veteran headstones. Nowadays, they have flatter headstones, and that's probably what I would prefer to have, honestly. But you know, we'll see exactly how that goes. But yeah, I like to explore a little bit. You know, the more you go to cemeteries, the more you just explore. Obviously, you think about your own mortality, what you want your headstone to say, what you want to happen to you when you die, all that kind of stuff. And you know, my uncle was 31 when he passed. He passed a little over 3 years ago, and I'm just 22. And obviously, as you can tell, death does not discriminate. But yeah, I think you think about obviously your relationship to this world, and you know, I don't think I really care if, you know, everyone ever remembers my name, or you know, if I'm known as this famous like director, or artist, or painter, or actor, or documentarian, or anything like that. You realize that the things that matter are how you are and how you're remembered to the people that care about you, and your friends, your family, stuff like that. So, and you know, if the internet still exists for like 100+ years, or specifically if like YouTube exists, or if there's like a Wayback Machine for people to see, this video is most likely gonna be playing when I'm gone, if anyone cares to watch it. I think that that's pretty interesting. Going back to obviously like family and stuff, I've decided, you know, I want to be cremated when I die. You know, I've seen too many embalmed corpses, and I've realized I really don't freaking like that. As the Bible says, from dust I was, from dust I shall return to. So that's kind of how I think about it. But you know, when I was younger, I didn't like cremation. Obviously, you know, a lot of people probably don't like the idea of it, but my great-grandpa Smith was cremated, and when I was younger, I didn't really understand why. When I got older, I actually found out why. It's pretty funny. But that's a story for another time. But yeah, he was cremated, and he was, of course, a World War II vet, but he still had all his military honors, his funeral honors, and stuff like that. But a really sweet part of why he was cremated is that when my great-grandma Gigi, when she passed, she was 90 when she passed. My great-grandpa was 89, so they lived pretty long. But when Gigi passed, they placed my great-grandpa's urn, his ashes, they placed it in the casket with her. So when they were buried together. So I think that's very sweet. So yeah, I don't know when this is going up, but you know, I'm right by Rice-Eccles Stadium. I think, can you see that from there? So as you can see, we're right by Rice-Eccles Stadium, which I think is pretty cool. And you know, my great-grandpa Smith, talking about my great-grandpa Smith, he was a Utes fan. He actually went to the University of Utah. So, you know, go Utes, that's all I'm saying, dude. Yeah, so I don't really have a way to end this video. I don't even know if this is gonna be the end of the video, but I'm just gonna walk around a little bit more and just see what other cool stuff is here. So thank you all for watching, and if this is the end, I'll see you. Born now over 200 years ago. Way different time, way different life. I thought this was a good place to end the video.